Welcome to Coffee Break with Rachel V. Hill, presented by Superbook Sports. Taking a daily look at the biggest stories in Denver sports and interacting live with you, the Coffee Break fam. So sit back, relax, grab a cup of joe, and enjoy your coffee break. Here's your host, Rachel V. Hill.
We are not Rachel V. Hill, but we are still excited to bring you Coffee Break on this Friday morning. He's James Merlot. I'm Will Peterson. James, how you doing today? Happy Friday. Another big weekend of football looms in the Mile High City and across Colorado, really.
Yeah, no, can't wait for it. Happy Friday to you as well. Excited to be here for it. Let's see. Are the two teams I care about? Well, there's a lot of them if we start getting into youth sports, but just from the teams we follow and cover, right?
The Academy, Broomfield.
Right.
Yeah, we've heard them.
Sixth grade Broomfield Blitz team, but let's put that aside.
Right.
The Buffs and the Broncos, do they go 2-0, 1-1, 0-2 this weekend? It'll be fascinating to see how it unfolds.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, listen, the previous weekend we at least had the highs of the Buffs to sort of offset the Broncos losses, and then last weekend was just like at one point I tweeted that they're getting outscored something like 99-15 or something, and quick math, 42 plus 70 is 112, 20 plus 6 is 26. And they lost 112-26 last weekend, James. That was not a fun weekend of football.
It was not. It was not a fun weekend for those of us who root for the local teams. So hopefully your fantasy team won. Hopefully you hit some parlays. But this weekend, let's hope the teams get a little bit better result on the field. Well, if I'm being honest with you, if you told me that it's 1-1, which one do you want to get the win? That's an easy one. Give me Coach Prime and the Buffs.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of crazy because you think about it, that would launch them back into the top 25. Rick George telling everyone to stay off the field. They ain't staying off the field in Boulder if they beat USC.
Nope.
And it would just sort of, the shine came off a little bit last week. Not a lot of it, just a little bit. If you get blown out again this week, the shine comes up a bit. If it's another 42-6, then it's all kind of like, okay, those first 3 weeks were fun. Let's see if we can scratch and claw to 5 or 6 wins this year.
Well, and I think the shine might be off a little bit more than you and I thought. I was talking to some people last night who have tickets to the game and can't go, right? Because we have a game, 6th grade youth football Broomfield Blitz tomorrow. So it conflicts. So they're trying to sell their tickets. They can't even sell them for face value, which is shocking to me for the USC game. I mean, Will Ferrell's rolling in and LeBron is supposed to be there and Jay-Z is supposed to be there. I would have thought like, hey, that's a pretty easy ticket to get rid of. But, it's another 10 a.m. kickoff, which is a little bit of a trick. You're coming off a 42-6 blowout. It's not the Heisman matchup that we thought it would be of Caleb Williams and Shedeur Sanders, because Shedeur Sanders has kind of come off that list. No Travis Hunter. So I thought that was interesting, almost shocking that they aren't able to sell their tickets. I would think the USC game would be, hey, how do you pay for the Stanford ticket? You sell the USC one, but that's not the case apparently.
Yeah, that'll be curious. I mean, obviously it'll be full. We know that, but I said this with Phil and Zach on the drive a couple days ago, James. If it is 40-10 in the third quarter or the fourth quarter, Folsom's going to be half empty again. People got better things to do. They're going to go up on Pearl Street on the hill, and they're going to enjoy their Saturday afternoon. So that scares me a little bit. Like we don't want to see, you see the Ducks fans leaving early last week. It was like, whatever, that's their right, but also a little embarrassing. You're going to, not stay to support your team to the end in a big blowout win. I don't want to tune in tomorrow at 12:30 and see the aerial shot of Folsom half empty. That scares me a little bit.
Yeah, I'm with you. And then it'll fully be the bloom is off the rose, right? Then you start looking at it and saying, okay, how do they get to 6 wins? How do they become bowl eligible? Which at the beginning of the season was the goal. But it's all sort of how you arrive at that, right? Like if they were 1-2 after 3 weeks and finished 6-6 and got into a bowl game, everybody'd be excited about that. If you're 3-0, you're ranked 19 and you finish 6-6, it's like, that was kind of an underwhelming route to get there or finish to get there. So, yeah, I think it's, look, I'm not a moral victory guy, but you don't necessarily have to win this game to keep the enthusiasm going, but you got to play the same exciting brand of football they did in the first 3 weeks. It was look, the winning was certainly a huge part of it. That's
Right.
why the country was paying attention to what was going on up at CU. But the brand of football they played was a big part of it too. It's not like they were winning games 17-14. You know, when you're scoring 40 plus against TCU, when you're hitting 36 against Nebraska, when Shadur Sanders is just throwing it all over the place, didn't throw an interception in the first 2 weeks, the crazy comeback against CSU and the double overtime, like that was part of it too, especially when you contrast that to what we typically tune in and watch on a Sunday where, you know, Broncos are the cure for insomnia. Last week, both the things didn't happen. They didn't win and they scored 6 points. So they at least need to get back to playing the exciting brand of football that got everybody all riled up.
Yeah. We'll get back to the Buffs in a little bit. You sort of teased some of those celebrities. I have some thoughts on that. But let's shift over to the Broncos. And the big news of the day yesterday, James, was Vance Joseph. First press conference since the debacle, the massacre in Miami, as I like to call it, 70-20. By now, everyone knows the stats. The second most points, the most points in the NFL since 1966. The second most yards allowed in NFL history was 726. James, in the first two questions, VJ pointed the finger at himself. It's me, 3 different times. Took responsibility and said, I need to fix it. I need to fix it quickly because I have to. That's a man who understands, at least the way I interpreted it, that if he doesn't get this fixed quick, he is on the chopping block. Do you like VJ taking the responsibility? And do you read it the same way I read it, that he knows he needs to fix it quick, or Sean Payton's not going to go for this, or maybe even more importantly, Greg Penner's not going to go for this?
I like him taking the blame, right? I think that's what coaches should always do. You shouldn't point the finger at the players. You shouldn't Vic Fangio this thing. You should take the blame. Now, we all know that that's not 100% the case, right? Like VJ didn't miss any tackles. VJ didn't blow the coverages, but it's his job to get him prepared. The buck stops with him. He's the defensive coordinator. So I like him taking the blame. Do I think he's really on the hot seat? Well, man, when you don't get fired after your team gives up 70 points and 726 yards, it makes me wonder if you would get fired. You and I talked about it on Denver Sports Tonight, though, Wednesday night. That to me, the logical place for them to make a move, given that they didn't do it here, was after the Thursday night game, October 12th in Kansas City, because you got a little bit of a mini bye, and you could be coming off of, wow, Patrick Mahomes just lit up the scoreboard on you. So, look, if Justin Fields rushes for 200 yards on Sunday, they might make a change. If they can't beat the Bears, they might make a change. But realistically speaking, this team is going to be 2-3, and they're going to be 2-3 heading into Arrowhead on a Thursday night, and that becomes the game. That's the game. They
just gave up 70. How can you possibly sit here with a straight face and tell me they're going to be 2-3? We have no idea if they're going to be 2-3. They might be the worst team in the NFL.
They're playing the Bears and the Jets, neither of which can score.
They also lost to the Raiders and the Commanders, I remind you.
What's the Broncos' biggest weakness? What phase of the game?
The defense sucks.
Right. And they're playing against the Bears, who are awful on offense, and the Zach Wilson-led Jets, who are awful on offense.
James, the Commanders scored 35 on them and then scored 3 against the Bills. So being awful on offense doesn't matter against this defense. It's a Swiss cheese. These guys are still NFL players. Justin Fields was still a top 15 pick or whatever it was.
I understand what you're saying. And look, they could lose on Sunday if Justin Fields, sets a record for rushing yards for a quarterback in a game, which would shock none of us, right? Like, hey, what's the new low for the Broncos this week? What's the newest way they can embarrass themselves? Yeah, something like that could happen. But come on. Will you be more surprised if they're 2-3 or if they're not 2-3?
More. I see them splitting. I see them splitting these next 2 games. That Jets defense is really, really good. And if they can lose 17-16 at home to the Raiders, they can lose 17-16 to home at the Jets. Especially, I think the Jets are going to make a QB change. I think it's going to be Trevor Siemian in Week 5. So,
color me scared. Trevor Siemian? Oh my gosh. Well, geez,
he might be better than Zach Wilson, and he can probably hang. If the Dolphins can hang 70. Trevor Wilson can hang 17 on this terrible Swiss cheese defense.
They better get the scoreboard operator some oxygen if Trevor Siemian's playing. I mean, he's going to be busy. Won't be able to take his mind off of things for a split second. Look, it's the NFL. Anything can happen. Like any given Sunday is a cliche for a reason, but they should beat the Bears. They should beat the Jets at home. They should be 2-3 going to Kansas City for a Thursday night game at Arrowhead that will determine the season. It will. If they lose, they're headed toward a top 10 pick. If they win, all of a sudden the tone in this town changes and we'll be like, do you remember 3 weeks ago? Do you remember the topic of conversation? Fire VJ and fire this and fire that. And, Sean Payton's an unmitigated disaster and all the rest of it. Things can change quickly. It all starts on Sunday. I'll be surprised if they don't beat the Bears. I'll be surprised if they don't beat the Jets.
Man, I love the optimism, but I told you on Wednesday, 70 changes everything. It's the most pathetic performance in franchise history. You have to be almost 60 years old to have witnessed the last time it happened, and you don't even remember it happening if you were a 3-year-old in 1966. I mean, it's a game changer in the sense, James, that anything and everything is on the table now, including losing to the Bears and losing to the Jets. I can't sit here and tell you with a straight face they're going to be 2-3 because they gave up 70. If they had lost 31-20, okay, I'd agree with you. They're probably going to be 2-3. Big difference between giving up 31 and giving up 70.
I understand, and I get that sort of changes the view of everything. But it's a little bit of the Russian judge too, right? Like, I'm throwing out the low score. They're also 2 plays from being 2-1. They are. They're 2 plays from being 2-1. They stop Washington on the 4th and goal. They go into halftime up 21-3. That thing is over. And if they make a play at any point against the Raiders or Will Lutz makes an extra point, they win that game. So, we can play the what if game all day long, and the recency bias to 70 points, and it was so bad. I understand how that skews viewpoints. I do. And you're right. It does change everything. But again, it's the Bears. The Bears had the number 1 overall pick last year until they traded it away. They may be worse this year. They're the worst team in the league. I guess this is a battle to see if the Broncos are in that conversation. I tend to think they're not. But if they lose on Sunday, they are. I think that would be impossible to deny. So I'm expecting them to be 2-3 heading into Arrowhead. And you and I will be heading into that game like, man, biggest Bronco game in a long time. All of a sudden, we're excited about Thursday night football. You watch. Go ahead and book it, Will.
I hope so, James, because I'm not ready to live a whole offseason and already be done with a year in October. Football season's too short, right? It's like, think about all the slog we have to go through for games to matter again. We have to get through this season. We have to get through free agency. We have to get through the draft. We have to get through the dead period. We have to get through OTAs. We have to get through training camp. We have to get through preseason, and then games start to matter again. You see what I'm saying? Like, we just did all that crap. I'm not ready for the game or for the season to be over after 3 games.
No, I mean, that means we're 49 weeks away from a game we care about. Like, that's a
depressing thought.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I don't think that's going to be the point. And look, maybe it's the Bronco fan in me. And it's what you're just talking about of, I don't want it to be over on October 1st. And if they lose on Sunday, it's over on October 1st. So they can claw their way back into it with a couple of wins here against some bad teams. And again, coming back from London last year, the Broncos won that game. The Jags lost it. They wound up making the postseason. They were 2-7 coming back from that. So, you don't want to go that route. That's not obviously the best case scenario in terms of, hey, how do you make yourself a playoff contender? But if you're 2-3, even if you go out to Kansas City and you're 2-4, season is far from over. It's why it's time to tank after they started 0-2 was a silly notion. But you're 0-4, you're 0-5. Yeah, you're toast at that point.
All right, Frank Clark spoke in the locker room yesterday, Broncos defensive end. He revealed, James, I've got it written down here, he's got a groin injury and an abductor injury. He will not play on Sunday against the Bears, targeting a return against the Jets the following Sunday, and made it abundantly clear he's got to play against the Chiefs, his former team, on Thursday Night Football. Obviously, we've only seen Clark in one game, backup role, but he was pretty honest, pretty revealing yesterday. Andrew Mason's got a piece at denversports.com about how he doesn't feel sorry for Vance Joseph, supports him, but doesn't feel sorry for him. Where are you and Frank Clark, and can he help the Broncos this season, or is he basically just done?
I would lean toward he's done. I mean, he got beat out by Jonathan Cooper. Raise your hand if you remember a Jonathan Cooper play during the first 3 games of the season, right? Like he's done
he had a couple sacks against the Commanders.
Okay. Like coverage sacks. Like wasn't like, oh wow, what a great play. Looked like Von Miller 2.0 at that point. Raises your hand. I mean, Frank Clark, when we've seen
your point, though. I see your point.
He's done very little. He's done very little when we've seen him. He's missed more time already than he's played. I will be pleasantly surprised if he does anything and he contributes at all. It's just another George Payton miss. I mean, start making that list. Get out the legal pad and make sure you got 2 pens because you're going to run the first one dry when you're making the list of misses by George Payton. Frank Clark is not high on the list because it wasn't a huge risk. I think it's a 1 or 2 year deal, relatively small money, but it's just another one that hasn't worked out, at least so far.
Yeah, I want to say it was like 1 year, $6 million, and it came sort of later in the offseason. But we do have to remember like where we are now versus like when the day they signed Frank Clark, me, you, Mace, Jake, Rachel, we were like, oh, this is kind of big, like let's get some stories up. Let's get some columns up. Like it's easy revisionist history of like, Frank Clark, whatever. He's the 3rd leading all-time sack leader in the playoffs. Like we were excited about Frank Clark when it happened. So I understand that you're down on him now, but I don't want us to forget we were pretty high on it at the time. Like this was supposed to be him and Randy Gregory. We're going to be the next, Vaughn and Chubb. I don't want to say Vaughn and DeMarcus because that's an insult to Vaughn and DeMarcus, but at least bring back a veteran pass rushing presence. And like, we got this dude talking about his injuries and how he's a backup and how he can't play this weekend. Like it's disappointing the timeline it's followed. It really is.
Yeah, I know we were excited about it at the time, but it just hasn't panned out at all. I mean, every year during training camp, it's always the story of is this guy and this guy going to combine for 30 sacks? And it was always Vaughn and insert other guy here. And then this year it was Randy Gregory and Frank Clark. I mean, 2 guys who've done absolutely nothing. I think they've combined for 1 sack up to this point. I think Randy Gregory has 1. Randy Gregory got paid $1 million last Sunday and didn't show up on the stat sheet. That's tough to do. He's been a colossal disappointment. Frank Clark's been banged up and been injured, so you give him a little bit of benefit of the doubt. But, we didn't see really anything from him during camp. We didn't see anything during the preseason. There's just nothing other than hope for us to say, hey, Frank Clark, when he comes back, that's going to make a difference. All right, maybe, but there's no reason to bank on that. We'll just have to wait and see.
All right, we're going to get back to the Buffs in just a minute, but it's that time of the show, James. We're going to give Broncos predictions for Broncos and Bears on Sunday at Soldier Field in Chicago. I know you think they're going to win. What do you think the score is going to be?
I think the Broncos come out and look pretty good. I think this is going to be a good day for the offense. Russ is going to continue to play well. He's been the best Bronco by a mile. He's Secretariat in the Belmont in that race.
Hold on. Don't sell my guy Marvin Mims short.
With the 2 big catches and a kick return, 3 plays in
explosive plays. Yeah.
Okay, Marvin Mims. Okay.
Russ fumbled against the Commanders. The 4th down play that you just
the guy who touches the ball every game or every play has had a couple of miscues versus Marvin Mims in his 2 catches.
The 4th down play you complained about never happens if Russ doesn't fumble. Butterfly effect.
Yeah, there was a face mask, didn't get called. That's the Sean Payton karma coming back to bite him. 27-17. 27-17 Broncos win. I think the defense plays significantly better. I think they'll play inspired football. I think they really only have to take away Justin Fields on the ground. So I think they'll be able to do that. I think the Broncos get a double-digit win.
So I agree with you on the high 20s for the Broncos. But if the Dolphins can score 70 and the Commanders can score 35, the Chicago Bears can get to 31. I've got Chicago. Wow. I've got Chicago beating Denver 31-28. The Broncos move to 0-4.
If the Broncos lose 31-28, if they give up 31 points to the Bears, Vance Joseph will not have a job on Monday afternoon.
I agree with you on that. Yep.
I mean, I don't know how you survive that, Will. It's a bad football team. It's a bad offense. It's very one-dimensional. Look, you don't have to be a defensive guru to say, hey, make Justin Fields beat you through the air. If they're unable to do that and they get 30 scored on them, yeah, it's time to just start writing pink slips to almost everybody.
Yeah, I don't love picking that, but The total in Vegas is like 46. I would run to the counter and slam the over. The Broncos offense is decent. They'll score plenty of points. The Broncos defense stinks. The Bears will use this as a get right game. I think this game easily gets into the 50s, if not the 60s on Sunday.
Boy, we could not be. I'm taking the Broncos in the under. You've got the Bears in the over. We are two trains heading in opposite directions. It's like a math word problem from like 6th grade.
70, man. I can't get 70 out of my head. It scarred me.
That did scar you.
All right, let's get back to the Buffs now. Dion sort of spilled the beans on the celebs coming to Boulder. You mentioned some names earlier, James. It's sort of like I'll believe it when I see it. But when you've got Dion on Buffs TV yesterday saying half the NBA is going to be in Boulder, we've heard all these rumors about LeBron and Jay-Z and Will Ferrell, Bronny maybe. You know, he plays for USC. Fingers crossed. It sounds like his health is good. So it's like, you know, what do you make of the celebs in Boulder tomorrow? And like, you know, Lil Wayne was big and The Rock was big, but LeBron, Will Ferrell, Jay-Z, where would that get on your list?
Oh, I think it'd top what we saw up there for the Rocky Mountain Showdown. And yes. I expect it to, right? USC's a big draw. It's kind of, you know, they're getting back into what they were when Pete Carroll was there, and it was celebs on the sidelines all the time. Most of the time it was for home games. It was at the Coliseum. It wasn't on the road, but hey, everybody wants to be in Boulder. Everybody wants to be a part of what's going on. It'll be a lot of them coming in to root for USC, though, not for the Buffs this time around. I mean, Will Ferrell's going to be, you know, decked out in maroon and yellow, I would guess. Right. So it'll be cool. It's just another great scene up there. The fact that they're once again still kind of the hot thing and the big conversation, the eyes of the sports world are on them. It's great. That'll be fantastic. The more celebrities, the better. Make it a show.
But like LeBron, I understand his son goes to USC, but we heard very small rumors about Bronny and CU. You remember that? There was some connections there. I gotta think LeBron and Prime are tight. Any chance LeBron's wearing black and gold?
No. His son goes to USC. He plays for the Lakers in LA. He is rooting for USC tomorrow. Or he'll be neutral. Maybe neutral. But okay. if you were odds, it's like USC's a prohibitive favorite, neutral, and then you'd get some value if you went with he's decked out in Buffs gear.
I would love to see LeBron in a throwback CU jacket, you know, like from the 80s or something. That would be kind of funny. Hey,
I'd be all for it, no doubt. I just don't expect to see it, but I love the fact that they're all going to be there. Make it a show. That's part of what it needs to be. So that's fantastic for the Buffs.
It is funny. Like, I loathe LeBron when the Nuggets are playing him. Loathe him. I actually kind of like the guy the rest of the time. Like, it's like during the Western Conference Finals, like my hate-o-meter for LeBron is through the roof. And now I'm like, I want to see LeBron in Buffs gear. It's like you kind of treat LeBron the celebrity and LeBron the basketball player two different ways.
Yeah, and he's a little bit like Tom Brady, right? Like Tom Brady, he drove you nuts when the Broncos were playing the Patriots. And so you just kind of get tired of hearing him. And then when it's not that matchup, you're like, hey, I can respect his greatness. And if Tom Brady rolled into Folsom Field tomorrow, I'd be like, oh, okay, hey, the GOAT is here. I think they're very much the same. That, yeah, you can hate him from a sports standpoint when your team is playing him, but they're so good and their greatness is pretty hard to deny that you got to tip your cap at some point.
All right, I got you for about one more minute before we bring in Cecil. Buffs and Trojans, James, how do you see it playing out tomorrow?
I think the Trojans get the win. The most disappointing part of last week for me was CU's offense. Like, you know, their defense couldn't stop Oregon early, couldn't get them off the field, but the Buffs offense couldn't keep them in the game even remotely. So I think they'll be better tomorrow. Still worry a lot about this defense. I think it's 42-28 USC, but I think we get an entertaining brand of football up at Folsom tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm just worried. How can the Buffs stop anyone? I mean, you know, we saw CSU have their way once Travis Hunter got hurt. They've been without him for about 6 quarters now, James. And Cormani McClain, I like Prime's honesty on Cormani, but he can't seem to get on the field and make a difference, 5-star recruit. So, yeah, I don't know how they stop him, but I'm with you. I think they probably score some more points, but our scores are very similar. I'm going with 45-31 Trojans tomorrow. We both have USC prevailing by 14, which would be a Buffs cover. All right, James, appreciate your time. Happy Friday to you, my friend. And, you know, we'll see you on Twitter this weekend. 2 big games.
All right. Sounds good. Well, thanks for having me on. Go Buffs.
All right, there he goes. James Marilat on his way out, and hopefully Cecil Lammy on his way in. Bear with us here for a second. There we go. Cecil Lammy's 5 fantasy tips presented by Hooters. Normally it's Rachel and Cecil talking fantasy football, but today it will be myself and Mr. Lammy doing it. Hey, Cecil, how are you, my friend?
It looks like a bad hair day, but just got done with the blow dryer. I got to put some product in my hair, get ready for the day, go out to the Broncos. And yes, you may be considering actual Denver Broncos for your fantasy team. Will, we cannot say this every week, obviously.
Yes, excuse me. That is one of my 5 questions. So we will get to them in just a moment. But let's start. People are desperate, always desperate. Waiver wires on a Friday. Maybe you've been working all week and you're finally looking at your team. Any sleepers, any guys still out there, particularly, I guess, receivers, running backs, maybe even a QB, that if someone needs to make a last-minute change, they can, and maybe they're not highly owned around the NFL in fantasy leagues.
Yeah, it might be Jameis Winston if he's out there. We're watching the situation with Winston. Of course, Derek Carr dealing with that AC joint sprain. So we'll continue to watch that. Waiting for Friday injury report before I, go full on with famous Jameis there. At the running back position, don't go to Melvin Gordon. Gus Edwards is going to play. Okay, I know people are watching that. They're watching Keaton Mitchell there as well. If we're going to get deep at the running back position. But for me, if we talk sleepers, it's Elijah Mitchell with San Francisco because, Christian McCaffrey can do it all. That's fine. But Mitchell can do a little bit there as well. And when you're facing Arizona, might as well just trot Mitchell out there and see what he can do in the second half when you've got a lead, as we fully expect everyone's going to think San Francisco is going to win that game, and for good reason. So that's a player I look to and go, okay, you know what? I don't have Christian McCaffrey, but if I can get Elijah Mitchell, throw him in there, then I've got some good things there as well. Wide receivers are interesting as well. On the flip side of that Arizona-San Francisco matchup, the talk about Rondale Moore getting more involved, pun intended, is something that's coming out of Arizona. He's an explosive player, perhaps and arguably the most explosive player in the game. And if they use him more as a running back, I believe he has 3 or 4 touches there this season off the top of my head. If they start to use him more in addition to his duties as wide receiver and just making plays, right, on a team that isn't going to stop anybody defensively, that's actually a good thing for your fantasy team. When you have a bad defense, it means that offense has got to score. And Rondale Moore is going to help Arizona do just that.
All right, 2 worrisome matchups I'm looking at. The Cowboys, everyone owns a lot of Cowboys, but they're playing Belichick and the Patriots.
Right.
And then the Chiefs, everyone owns a lot of Chiefs, but they're playing a Jets defense that, is by far the strength of that team ever since Rodgers popped his Achilles. Do you dare bench any Cowboys or Chiefs, or do you let it ride with the core players on both those teams?
I'm going to start your studs guy, and by the time we get to week 4, we know who the studs are. Now, entering the season, we would know CeeDee Lamb. You're starting CeeDee Lamb every week. Don't care about the matchup, and Belichick's going to take one guy away. That one guy's probably going to be CeeDee Lamb. But the other receivers in the room of Brandon Cooks, Michael Gallup, CSU represent, they're going to have something to cheer about. But you haven't seen those guys kind of step up yet. Their tight ends are all kind of the same guy, Peyton Hendershot or whatever. And then Tony Pollard, they're running the rock. So start your Cowboys as you would, because I wouldn't recommend Gallup or Cooks anyway. But obviously I'm recommending Pollard, recommending CeeDee Lamb on a weekly basis. And as far as the Chiefs go, that Jets defense does swarm. They are tough. The way to beat that, space and speed. I know it sounds like a metal band, but it's what Mike McDaniel has done. And guess what everyone is doing? They are stealing Shanahan concepts from Mike McDaniel, because you're seeing fly motion into dig routes, which is unusual, but that's what McDaniel has brought upon the league this year. You saw it even last night that Detroit was using concepts from the Miami Dolphins. I imagine Kansas City, they've got a thing or two cooking up there as well with Andy Reid. So, yeah, you're not going to bench your Chiefs. You might expect a little bit less from Isaiah Pacheco, maybe a little bit more from Jerick McKinnon as they use space and speed to attack that ferocious Jets defense.
All right, question number 3 for you, Cecil. You mentioned the Broncos. Judy, obviously, we need to see that final injury report, but between Judy, Sutton, Mims, Javonte, Russ, the defense, Will Lutz, I don't know. We don't have to go through them all. We're running out of time. But give me a couple Broncos that are worth a shot against the Bears on Sunday?
Number one in my receiver matchups this week. Now, not the number one receiver overall, but in terms of who has the best matchup this week, it's Cortland Sutton against Jalen Johnson. Like when we look at 1v1 situations, Sutton should be able to get near 100 yards. I'm projected for a touchdown this week, so it should be a robust day for him. And again, Broncos defense can't stop anybody. They're going to try to contain Justin Fields. Good luck with that. They also have Roschon Johnson on the flip side, very talented rookie running back who I love and adore. But because their defense can't stop anyone, means the offense has to do more. Sutton has the best 1v1 matchup. He's not my number one receiver this week, but he is a wide receiver 2 with upside for your fantasy team. So Cortland Sutton versus Jalen Johnson, give me that all day. And Marvin Mims is a what the heck flex, as they'll continue to use him more. Can't reveal what we saw at practice, but there will be some deep shots taken depending on if this team can run the ball effectively. Javonte Williams always kind of in that running back 2 flex range. That's where he's going to be this week. But if they run more effectively, that will mean more Marvin Mims and 2 wide receiver sets and more of those deep shots, those moon balls that Russell Wilson loves to throw. That makes Mims a perfect what the heck flex.
I love it. Marvin Mims, baby, scoring touchdowns left and right. Question 4 for you. You mentioned it a little bit, but the Broncos just gave up 70. So what Bears can I get into my lineup? Because I know the Bears offense stinks, but I got to start a Bear or 2. I mean, come on, man. The Broncos got a 70 burger hung on them by the Dolphins.
Yeah, man, you start those running backs. I'm not predicting a Devon Achane. I always called him A-Chain. Just stick with A-Chain. But anyway, he wants Achane. Devon Achane, I'm not expecting that Raheem Mostert type of production, but you have Khalil Herbert, who I love from Vatech. And I was so sad when Roschon Johnson was drafted by Chicago because I was like, he's like 3rd behind Dante Foreman and Herbert. Well, he's worked his way up to 2nd. And now they're using both of those young backs, Herbert, who can do it all as a receiver as well, Johnson, who's got power and receiving ability there too, in addition to Justin Fields. If you say DJ Moore is going to get taken away by Pat Surtain, okay, fine, whatever. It's not like I'm looking to the Chicago passing game with much anticipation, but Cole Kmet, their tight end, is a sneaky tight end play, got low end tight end 1 upside this week because of the matchup. And again, the Broncos defense is not good. You can exploit that from fantasy. Justin Fields has let you down the entire season. This week he won't, from a fantasy lens. So put him in your lineup.
Okay, I like it. I like it. The final one for you, Cease. We know Deebo Samuel has not yet practiced this week. You mentioned Elijah Mitchell. The Niners are so explosive. They're playing the lousy Cardinals. They're going to score 40 points. Let's live in a world where you roster Deebo and he can't go. Give me some depth type Niners, or maybe even, someone on the waiver wire to go grab, just because San Francisco's a dynamic offense. You want dynamic offensive players on your team. And if Deebo can't go, that frees up someone else to get a lot of touches on Sunday.
Yeah, it frees up someone else. That someone else might be Wan'Dale Robinson if we flip to the Giants side of things. And we're watching a couple of things there. You got Giants and Seahawks. That's Monday night. I always go for what I call Monday night punch. Yeah. Because really fantasy football is sometimes like, well, it's like Tommy Boy, right? Where you just want the guarantee on the box. Like, I'm down by 60, but I got Wan'Dale Robinson on Monday night, so I'm good, right? I got a chance. Right? And that's just that mental kind of cushion you need. So looking to see more Wan'Dale Robinson as the Giants move forward with their lousy defense. Again, lousy defense means fantasy points on the other side. So Wan'Dale Robinson could be a guy you look to waiver wire. And then Jackson Smith and Jigba, the rookie receiver for Seattle, speaking of that game on Monday night, Geno Smith told him, "You're the best, man." Because everyone kind of wondered, what was Geno telling him on the sidelines? I know for a fact, Geno said, "You're the best. Keep your head up, kid." So perhaps maybe more targets for him. And he's out there on a lot of waiver wires because people are disappointed. They haven't seen much from the first rounder. So Jackson Smith and Jigba and Wan'Dale Robinson, 2 young receivers that I love and out there on the waiver wire.
Nice. I love it, Cease. Thanks so much. That's Cecil Lammy's Fantasy 5 presented by Hooters. And that's going to do it for Coffee Break on this Friday. Appreciate Matt behind the scenes. Appreciate James. Appreciate Cease. I'm Will. Rachel, will see you next week. Take care, everyone. Have a great weekend.